On another day when the weather more than played its part, the Amgen Tour of California took on a familiar appearance. After the picturesque crossing of the Golden Gate Bridge, the scene was set for a long coastal ride to Santa Cruz. A routine day? Never, as 10 riders got clear. On the final climb, Levi Leipheimer, the winner overall for the past 2 years, and smarting from being beaten into his hometown of Santa Rosa the day before, he rode like a man possessed to arrive in Santa Cruz with only the young American, Tom Peterson, along for the ride. With the overall classification settling down a bit today, the third stage from San Jose to Modesto may take on a more familiar pattern and give the sprinters like Tom Bonan or Mark Cavendish their first chance to stretch their legs and win a stage of this unpredictable race. We'll find out when it all unfolds next on Versus.
The riders leave California's oldest city today and work their way inland. After what looks like another day in the elements, the crowds will be eager to greet them. Stage number 3 of the 2009 Amgen Tour of California is upon us. Hello, everybody. Along with my two modest mates waiting with me here in Modesto, Phil Liggett and Paul Sherwen, I'm Craig Hummer. Yesterday, the weather did its best to put its stamp on the stage, but by the end of the day, Phil, I think it was Astana and more appropriately Levi Leipheimer who imposed their will.
I think there have been two talking points of the 3 days we've seen so far of this race. That is the weather and the way the riders have really taken this race to heart and put on a great performance. And the public have turned out despite the weather.
Just over 24 hours ago, stage number 2 was underway. Let's take a look at the highlights.
Well, it was a wet start down in Sausalito, and it was threatening to stay the whole day on the long ride. They started in the shadow of the Golden Gate Bridge. Francisco Mancebo, after his great ride into Santa Rosa, you wouldn't know he was the race leader, his yellow jersey covered by a racing cape. There's the rather dismal scene of the entourage as they cross the wonderful historic monument of the Golden Gate Bridge. Early on, Levi Leipheimer was in a spot of bother. A tyre change here, but he got a quick one and was soon back in the race. Lance Armstrong had his moments too, Paul, because he, in fact, hit his own official photographer and fell off on one occasion.
But I think the most important thing was once they got to the steepest part of the race, Levi Leipheimer just looked over his shoulders and made the serious demonstration of force. Carlos Barredo was at the front of the race with Jason McCartney and, of course, Tom Peterson. But I tell you one thing, the most important man of the race was doing his job behind, because Levi Leipheimer carved his way through every one of the early morning breakaway until finally he was at the front of the race in a trio.
Yes, and by the time they got down to the finish, only Tom Peterson, who was in that 10-man breakaway, survived with him. He followed him down to the finish. He couldn't help Leipheimer. He came out of his slipstream, though, to take the biggest win of his young career. He's only 22. Nobody regretted that. But that was the man who claimed yellow perhaps a day later than he expected to.
Jonathan Vaughters ecstatic with his protege's win. We take a look at the overall. Levi in yellow, the two-time defending Amgen Tour of California champion, hoping to make it a three-peat. Phil, Mick Rogers, though, closely placed.
Big danger, Michael Rogers. He is going well. He's a big threat to Leipheimer because he can ride a time trial. Zabrisky's also had a podium finish in this tour in the past. He can ride a time trial. Lance Armstrong, who knows? He's sitting fourth. Unbelievable. Just half a minute behind his teammate. And looking further down, watch out for Robert Gesting. He's maturing now and leading the young rider race. And Oscar Sevilla seems to be back for rock racing and has not made a move yet.
Some of the other names we're paying attention to here in California. Ivan Basso only 42 seconds back, as is Tom Danielson for Garmin Slipstream. This is a statement stage race for him. He wants to do very well indeed. And Floyd Landis now at over 6 minutes back. After the stage, Paul Sherwen caught up with Lance.
But I have to say, a pretty impressive performance by your teammate, because Levi Leipheimer today really, I think, paid you guys back for all of the work that you did yesterday.
Oh, he was super. I mean, when he went on the last climb there, he was untouchable, and you know, those guys behind him started working. The two Columbia guys, a couple of Slipstream guys, and Schleck. So they brought back some of the time, but he clearly showed that he's the best rider in the race today.
You'd said that before the start of the Tour of California, but how does it make you feel sitting in a group like that with other contenders sitting back and knowing that you've got a strong man up front?
It makes life a lot easier. I was glad to just be in that position. I didn't feel super, so I was just trying to follow the wheels and send him as much positive thinking as we could. He was strong.
Everyone knew coming into this race on paper that Astana would be the team to beat, and yesterday they just showed why. Now, Paul, as we look to today's stage, it does not have a sting in the tail. It's more like a right cross to the jaw right from the start, especially with Sierra Road within the first 10 miles.
Well, that's going to be a very hot start for the day for all of these riders, depending on what the weather conditions are going to be like as they move away from San Jose. That little red spot you can see there is Sierra Road, and it's a very difficult climb. The profile shows it all of the climbs stacked up in the first 50% of the event, but the fact that it's very flat over the last half of the course makes me lead to myself to believe it could be a day for the sprinters.
Well, in the general classification, in particular with Team Astana, Phil, what do they have to do to protect that lead for Levi?
Well, because of all the hills at the beginning, they're just going to make sure nobody slips away of any importance, and if they can bring the race back together over the top, why not? It could be a day for the sprinters.
Well, Paul, as you just mentioned, 50 flat miles a run in here to Modesto. What's a guy like Mark Cavendish doing? Is he just itching to show his stuff?
Well, first of all, what he's got to do is get over the climbs at the start of the race, and then he's got to take advantage of a very strong team and hope that his team can pull them all back together, because Mark Cavendish is proving to be one of the fastest sprinters in the world. Crossed the line first here in California last year, but wasn't awarded the victory, but went on to win stages in the Tour of Italy and the Tour de France to prove to us that he is one of the fastest men in the world. And I'll tell you one thing, he's itching to try and get a victory right here in California.
But Phil, the usual cast of characters are going to try to disrupt that Columbia High Road party.
For the fastest finish in the world right there, Thor Hushovd, Freire and JJ Haida has already won 5 stages historically in the Tour of California. I reckon he'll win somewhere along the route. There aren't many places to win on this race, so maybe today for him.
The time for the sprinters is running out. The time is now for the sprinters' teams to put them in position. When we come back, racing on the road. We're waiting for them in Modesto. The riders got underway just a little bit before noon today, and as we expected before Sierra Road, the attack started. 4 men now have broken away. You're taking a look at Bradley White from the outs presented by Max's squad, closely followed by Bauk Malema from Rabobank, Brian Vanburg from Liquid Gas is in there, and Jeffrey Lauder from the BMC squad here in the continental U.S. And the gap is roughly about 5 minutes and 15 seconds to the peloton. Astana at the front of the peloton doing the hard work as expected with Levi Leipheimer in the jersey. That is Chris Horner. He and Lance Armstrong have done the lion's share. There you see Lance in the yellow helmet. Whoa, look at that. That looked like Levi Leipheimer went down just touching the wheel of Lance Armstrong. We're going to have to check that out, but that would not be good, to say the least, for the Astana squad when the GC man... Okay, here we go. It's Horner and Lance, and yep, that's Levi right behind him, and he crosses wheels, the back wheel of Lance Armstrong. Levi brings his front wheel over and then goes down. So the GC leader, Levi Leipheimer, a bit of a mental lapse right there, crossing wheels with Lance Armstrong, and he has now caused a pileup in the peloton. More appropriately and more specifically, we'll have to bring you the status of how he is doing. His Astana squad bringing him back up now. It's a long day out on the road, and certainly when you got bumps and bruises, it's not going to make it any better. Well, that mental lapse, guys, costing Leipheimer some precious time, but more importantly, perhaps some skin fill along the way.
Yeah, it didn't look too serious, although there's an awful lot of riders did ride over him in that crash this morning, Paul. I mean, little bit of a mistake, and even the top guys make it. Leipheimer clips the back wheel of none other than Lance Armstrong. Armstrong stays upright. May not even have known it was Levi that hit his back wheel, but Leipheimer disappeared under a massive riders, but he got on okay, and the peloton did slow down and let them back in.
Well, he did get up quite quickly. He didn't seem to panic at all. He knew there was no major pressure on him to get back into the main field because there was no speed in the peloton at that time. So I have to say, as we look now at these 3 leaders, there are in fact 4 of them. One guy has stopped a little bit further back for a natural break, but they've just gone over the summit of Patterson Pass, and that's got us halfway through the race here this afternoon. Once they get to the bottom of Patterson Pass, it's pretty much flat all the way into Modesto.
That's going to be the 50-mile run that we talked about, Phil, and where you would expect after the peloton gets over, the sprinters teams should come to the front and help Astana drive the pace.
Yeah, absolutely. They're just monitoring this at the moment. They're not going to commit suicide to whip it up. They know it's a flat run-in. The sprinters, they know, will want to take what is one of the few chances to try and take out the stage. So there'll be a lot of teams willing to chase here. So it's a little bit of a gamble going on. The peloton just on 5 minutes behind. That means that the rider up in that breakaway, Bauke Mollema, is the leader of the race, virtual on the road. But there's still quite a way to go. So about 90 kilometers to the finish on 55 miles. They're not going to over-worry just yet.
Front end of the main, Phil, not surprisingly controlled by Team Astana. It's their responsibility as the team of the overall leader. And what a squad it is as well, because, you know, when you look at the composition of the top 10 riders in the overall standings here, it really is quite remarkable, because Levi Leipheimer leads it, but in 4th position he's got a teammate, Lance Armstrong. 5th position, Chris Horner. 6th position, Janez Brajkovic, and 8th position, Chechu Rubiera. That puts him in an extremely strong tactical position, but it also makes it quite difficult to decide who's going to do the work to chase down any leaders.
King of the Mountain number 2, the results over Patterson Pass. It's Bauke Mollema from the Netherlands, the Rabobank team in first. Brian Van Borg closely following. He rides for Liquid Gas. And then it's Jeffrey Lauder from BMC, Phil, taking that 3rd position.
Well, Mollema, I must say, is having a bit of an inspired day of racing out there, because he took the small bonus at Livermore, which gave him a 3-second bonus off his overall time. So he was 2 minutes 14 seconds behind at the start of the day. He's down to 2 minutes 11, but at the moment all that's academic, because he's gained more than 5 minutes on the highway. But clearly he is a man for the future. He's only a youngster. His first year as a pro was last year for Rabobank. Before that he was one of the Rabobank nursery riders coming through. Well, déjà vu. The men of Lance Armstrong on the front of the peloton as they now come towards the end of the climbs of the day. Now they are on the last climb of the day, the peloton here, and once they top over the Patterson Pass, they will descend down to the flatlands. One sprint as they come, and then they'll be on the running down to the finish in Modesto. It's such a long flat run-in, Paul. I really can't see this breakaway holding off a peloton that surely is going to start to whip the speed up.
Well, I think today Team Astana, Phil, will find themselves a certain number of friends out on the road here, because there are a number of great sprinters in the Amgen Tour of California this year, and there are not many days left for them to show us why we've always nicknamed those guys the warriors of the route. Of course, I think, and I'm thinking about Team Saxo Bank for JJ Hayedo, Team Columbia High Road, of course, for them, and that's going to be the British sprinter Mark Cavendish, and on top of that you can throw in maybe one of the other teams like Quickstep, and they'll be looking for Tom Bonin, who certainly didn't come to the Tour of California to ride round the whole of this race just wearing a raincoat.
Well, that's what they need to wear right now, because the rain has started on the descent down the pass here. And as you can see, the rain coming onto the camera lens, and the riders up the front there are laying off each other, which is a very wise decision. It's quite a technical descent before they continue to the flatlands, and then hopefully they'll get a bit better weather. You can see right ahead of the race the flatter roads.
The peloton has made it over Patterson Pass. It is mainly a downhill run now here into Modesto. For Levi Leipheimer, however, a strange day at the office. He's already gone down, and he caused the crash himself. How much is it going to affect him? We're all going to find out. We welcome you back to our live coverage here on Versus of the Amgen Tour of California. Great pictures after the peloton, and of course the leaders before them had gone through Patterson Pass, that lush green countryside due in large part to the rains we've been having over the past few weeks. 4 men out in front. The breakaway steady at about 5 minutes ahead of the peloton. Brad White from Ouch, Jeffrey Lauder, BMC, Brian Van Borg from Liquid Gas, and Bauke Mollema from Rabobank, the closest placed man on GC to Leipheimer, only 2:14 behind.
There's your Rabobank.
A great chance, isn't it, Phil, for Balk Malema here, only 2 minutes and 14 seconds behind Levi Leipheimer. If he continues to push this pace, even though it doesn't look like they'll stay away, he's virtual leader on the road right now.
Oh, absolutely. He is the virtual leader on the road, that's for sure. Still a long way to go, Craig, of course. And the big thing is that Rabobank have come here with the big intention of riding a good race. They've been in the news all of the way so far. And I quite fancy them to pull off a stage win at some stage. Robert Gessing is the leader of the best young rider. He's won that award the last 2 years. He's not often staying young enough, long enough to win it 3 times straight, but it looks like he might this time. And yeah, I think that's it's a good move. It's a move that will also profit teams like High Road, Columbia High Road, because they can bounce off the back of an attack by somebody like Rabobank. And maybe a double-pronged attack against Astana, who are immensely strong right now and taking a lot of confidence from the fact that Armstrong is back amongst them.
I have a feeling, though, that this is just going to be the carrot in front of the donkey today, because they haven't built themselves up a massive advantage. In fact, the time gap, which stretched out to in excess of 5.5 minutes at one stage, is now tilting the other way. The last time check we got was 4 minutes and 40 seconds. And that would indicate to me that Team Astana, of course, are going to take this chase very seriously. Astana will try and bring it to around about the 2.5 to 3 minute mark, and then they'll look over their shoulders to the teams of the sprinters like Quickstep, like Columbia High Road, and say, okay, guys, you want a stage victory, you better come and do some work for it.
The Astana team out in front right now. You mentioned that 2.5 mark, Paul. Is that somewhat of an unwritten rule in the peloton, or does it just depend on the day and what's left in the stage when the sprinters teams make that decision?
It pretty much depends on the profile. You have a look at the race profile. If it's an undulating profile, you would want to bring it a little bit closer than that, because the fact is, you know that on the climbs, if you've got a good climber in the breakaway, you actually can't pull that breakaway back on the uphill part of the course. And then on the downhill part of the course, everybody basically rides at the same speed. On a long, flat run-in like that, as we have this afternoon, these guys know that over the last hour of racing, they can very easily wipe away 5 or 6 kilometers of advantage for a breakaway group, because of the difference between the two speeds.
Lance Armstrong has been at the front of the peloton for most of the day. There he is in the black jacket to the right with the yellow helmet. He's been protecting Levi Leipheimer as best he can. And this morning, Bob Roll caught up with him.
Your progress in your comeback so far this year?
Well, I think if it just depends how you compare it. I mean, if you looked at the previous years, or the 7 years where we won the Tour, you could look at middle of February in all of those years, and you have to say that we're ahead of schedule. I mean, I certainly wouldn't have been this far. I wouldn't have been sitting fourth in the Tour of California in those years, which it could be a good thing or it could be a bad thing. I mean, we might be too ahead of schedule. So, but I can't help that. I'm having a good time, aside from a little bit of weather, a few crashes. Excited to help Levi, and I'm not thinking about July right now, or even May at the Giro. So just trying to make sure he gets the W and get on to the next thing.
The GC battle looks pretty intense, with a couple of big names queued up right behind Levi.
It definitely. I mean, it's not going to be a walk in the park for him. You still have Zabriskie, you still have Rogers. We still, I think he's obviously the odds-on favorite. He knows the course. He's proven in the past that he's going to be fast on that day. But hey, it's bike racing, and even days like this, bad weather, you got to be smart and stay safe.
All right, Lance, good luck.
Thank you.
Paul, you've been struck lately with your time with Lance, just how relaxed he is, even with all this racing he's done and all the commitments he has after the race ends every day.
He's very relaxed now. He's a completely different bike rider to when he was under the intense pressure of trying to win the Tour de France for a 3rd, 4th, 5th and 7th time. Now he's come back to the sport, and he's basically pretty much enjoying himself. He's very relaxed at the start. He's very relaxed at the finish, taking time to sign autographs for anybody who is prepared to come and talk to him, taking time to talk to the press instead of jumping into a black windowed car and getting away from the race as quickly as possible. But what amazes me, and especially I think both Phil and I were shocked in South Australia, was he would ride the race, and the stuff that he was doing after the race was 10 times more than any other bike rider was doing. He was spending time in cancer clinics, meeting with the Prime Minister of Australia, meeting with the Prime Minister of South Australia, and still finding time to ride a competitive bike race. And I think he's just come back with a completely completely different view on the sport, because after all, he has nothing else to prove.
Do you feel, Phil, that that burden, now that it's been lifted, is probably what's somewhat given him wings at the moment, and it just has lightened his load, so to speak?
No, absolutely. He's come back with the real reason, which is to lead his crusade, which is trying to better everybody's life from the scourge of cancer. And that's his first aim. And I think he really means it when he says he's enjoying it. Apart from the weather, apart from this, that, and the other, he is actually loving what he's doing right now.
This map shows we're going from left to right on your screen. The green dot down in the left-hand corner, San Jose, making our way to the right of Modesto. The peloton a bit ahead, or I should say a bit behind the breakaway at the moment. Excuse me. The peloton has brought it down under the 5-minute mark, but it's been quite consistent at that level, Paul, for a long time.
Yes, it's pretty much been locked in since this 4-man breakaway formed itself at the front after the descent of Sierra Road, which was a very difficult climb to have right at the start of the race. In fact, the riders went over that first climb of the day after just 13 kilometers. Francisco Mancebo caught the breakaway, went past them to get himself maximum points in King of the Mountains, and then decided the better part of valor was actually to wait for the main field. And I think really after the long escapade he made on the first day on the open road, that was probably a pretty sensible thing. He doesn't want to be in long breakaways every day. So I think now he's moved his desire over to try and win himself the King of the Mountains classification. He lost too much time yesterday to win the Amgen Tour of California.
Astana driving the front, keeping the break manageable. It's under 5 minutes. Will it continue to drop? That's what my two experts tell me. Phil and Paul have called a sprint finish at the end. The sprinters' teams would love nothing more. The riders are about halfway through stage number 3 of our trek from San Jose to Modesto. The weather trying to improve. There's been rain a little bit on the route. The sun at times has been out here in Modesto at the moment. Unfortunately, it is raining. The riders are not going to want to hear that, but it's a long way until they get to us here at the finish line. Astana has been doing a lot of the work, and as you can see, the echelons starting to form. We expect crosswinds throughout these few stages that crisscross back and forth from the west to the east, and then again east to west of the state, and that is exactly what's happening. Well, Phil, the gap has been yo-yoing a bit in between 4.5 and 5.5, but the good news for the breakaway riders is they've kept it up there.
And there's good tempo riding being done, steady as you go. Sharp right-hand bend here, and caution advised because the roads are still wet out there, Craig. Here in Modesto it is raining, and I hope it blows away, but they're catching these showers as they sweep through. We're a little bit inland from the Pacific today, whereas yesterday we were on Highway 1 for much of the day, but now we've gone inland as we head towards the flatlands around Modesto. But they've really got a lot of work to do to bring back such a gap now, and it could be very interesting towards the end today.
Well, I think the interesting thing is the weather is, as far as I'm concerned, is 100% better than it has been over stages 1 and 2, because
that's right.
It's a number of scattered showers, but that's what they're starting to become now, and I think the riders will be extremely happy with the improvement in the weather forecast. And just checking the long-range weather forecast for tomorrow and the next few days as we start to go further south in the state, it is starting to look as if Lady Sunshine is going to come out at last.
I liked Levi's quote from yesterday, guys, where he said, imagine stepping into the shower, turning the water to as cold as possible, and just standing there for 4 hours. That's what it felt like.
It's like a James Bond film, eh? But yeah, it is very, very dreary. But when you're a pro bike rider, the elements, well, you've just got to accept them, I guess. One of the great guys that never even looked at the weather before he got on his bike was Sean Kelly. You'd never meet a harder man than Sean. The Irishman never had low morale. Just put the clothes on, got to the action, and usually won the races.
What's the worst day you ever had on the bike, Paul, weather-wise?
I think it was the worst week, actually, and I talked about it just the other day. It was 1980 in Paris-Nice. It was won by Gilbert Duclos-Lassalle, and it actually, apart from the final day in Nice on the Champs-Élysées, it snowed every morning. And I remember one long stage into Saint-Etienne, Bernard Hinault, who was the great star in that era, he just could not be bothered with the colder, so he stopped at the side of the road, changed all of his clothes, put some winter boots on, put some big gloves on. He rode the stage off the back in the snow, and at times we were racing in around about 6 to 8 inches of snow on the road. He finished 45 minutes behind. I was in the main field until maybe about 5 kilometers to go. I got dropped with 5 kilometers to go and lost 15 minutes. And I went back, and what Levi was saying about the cold shower, I got into a hot bath, and I was still cold an hour later.
So in your mind, these guys are soft if they complain about the rain.
They don't complain about the rain. I don't think anybody has complained from any of these bike riders. They've all gone out every day. They put on an incredible race. As we're looking at here, you know, Brian Van Borg at the front. He has one of those riders who's been battling against the cold for 3 days and was still, as he was this morning, prepared to come out and do battle.
Van Borg, some connections actually to Discovery Channel, Phil, back in 2007, the Danish time trial champion, also has passed been on CSC as well.
Yes, that's right. And Van Borg is a vastly underrated rider. He never seemed to click with Discovery Channel for whatever the reason, and therefore it never quite worked out for him. But as he's moved around, he's put in some very good rides, and maybe he's found his feet by coming across here now to Liquigas. It's the first time he's ridden. He was with Discovery Channel in 2007. Just won one race last year, stage of the Tour de Loire et Cher in France.
Great job by these four to continue to work together, sharing the workload, spending their time out in front, breaking the wind for the other three. And that, of course, the duty in the peloton has fallen to Astana, their leader of their team and the leader of the Amgen Tour of California, Levi Leipheimer, back in the pack, protected by his teammates. We expect the sprinters teams to come to the fore eventually, but for now, they're happy letting Astana do all the work. The Amgen Tour of California continues on Versus tomorrow. It's stage number 4, taking us from Merced to Clovis. That's the Tour of California tomorrow at 4 Eastern, right here on Versus. It's going to be a day for the climbers. Most of the day spent above the 2,000-foot level in the Sierra Mountains. It's going to be cold yet again out on the road, but Levi Leipheimer has shown he's got ice water in his veins, especially after that move yesterday and again after his fall earlier today. But the best moves so far of the day have been by 4 men. Bauke Mollema, Brian Van Borg, Jeffrey Lauder, and Bradley White are out in front as Astana starts to drag the peloton. But for the first time, we see some Columbia jerseys coming to the front. This could be the move. I just mentioned, Phil, the jersey's starting to mix up, I think, for the first time. Astana now, Columbia in the mix off the front as well. It looks as though maybe some teams getting anxious.
Well, Columbia really have got no reason to come forward just yet, except, of course, for the big sprinter. But, I mean, are they going to sacrifice using a lot of energy to chase a breakaway down when they're looking at Michael Rogers for the big win here? I would still leave the pressure on Astana just for the moment.
That would be logical, but that's discounting the desire to win by Mark Cavendish. Cavendish knows he's only really got today's stage, which is the easiest stage over the next few days, and the stage the day after tomorrow. And putting a couple of riders up to help Team Astana on the front end of the main field is not going to take away from the tactics on tomorrow's, what I think is going to be a very testing stage through the hills. At the moment, the situation is the breakaway are at around about 60 miles covered, and 5.5 minutes further back is at Levi Leipheimer, and that corresponds to around about 2 miles or 3 kilometers. And they've got a little bit of a ripple between the 60th mile and the 75th mile, but that's not really, I don't think, anything that's going to make anybody too concerned after the 2 climbs they've been over in the early part of the stage.
We can't see the number, but there is on the left a Columbia rider right there breaking the wind off the front. Everyone else, it seems, at the front is Astana at the moment.
Interesting.
Another Columbia rider coming up along the right side.
So obviously the order's gone out that they're anticipating a win for Mark Cavendish here. They're now telling the Columbia team to get in, mix it with Astana, and lift the pace a little bit. They've heard the last call was 5:20. They realise at 68 miles into the race that this pace is losing ground to the breakaway. They can't let it run any further away if they want to bring it back.
Another team just dropping one rider into the line there as well was the Cervélo TestTeam, and that would be the team of Thor Hushovd. Yeah. You see the sprinters, Phil, they really are men who like to show off why they are great warriors in an event like this. It's very important for them to take out any chance that they've got. And Mark Cavendish, I think after 2 very dominant wins in the Tour of Qatar, one of them over Tom Bonan, will obviously here this afternoon be encouraging his team to take the chance of getting themselves a stage victory. And being pretty much a local team based out of San Luis Obispo, it's extremely important for them as an American team to get even a stage victory here, because once you've got a stage victory under your belt, then you can start to think about the overall win with Mickey Rogers.
2 hours 43 under those wheels has passed by. They're about an hour and 17 minutes from the finish, I would reckon. And that's not a long time to pull back a gap of 5 minutes and 20 seconds. So they've realized it, I think, and it might be just in the nick of time, because now we're going to see some hard riding by the peloton.
4 men in front, checking in with their team cars, getting some instructions at the moment, whether it's through race radio or just, as we see, the old-fashioned way, talking through the window. They will also start to put their head down and try to drive the pace as best they can. The flick of the right elbow there, of course, from the BMC rider Jeff Lauder, saying, all right, you move up, your turn to break the wind.
Well, what's interesting over the last couple of years is there's a strange tactic kind of developed in breakaways, and what they do is they build themselves up to an advantage of 4 or 5 minutes. Then they don't try and scare the main field by stretching that lead out to 10 and 12 minutes. They lock it in at 5 minutes and they control the advantage they have over the main field. And then as the main field starts to accelerate, the breakaway starts to accelerate, and that's psychologically very, very tough, because when you're starting to put the pressure on the chase at the front end of the main field and you don't see the gap going down, that can be the psychological slap in the face to discourage anyone at the front end of the main field chasing.
We talked about this a little bit, Paul, at the beginning of the show, that the patience needed, not necessarily just within each stage of the sprinters, but of course when they have to decide to go at the end of a day. And you got to figure Mark Cavendish and his crew getting antsy. The 4 in front, whether it is by design or simply by accident, they have kept that 5-minute lead, and the peloton has not really reacted yet. Although Colombia has started to move to the front to help pace with Astana, how quickly will that gap come down? Our riders aren't logging into anything except now some serious miles. 4 out in front. Bauke Mollema from Rabobank in 2nd position. Brian Vanberg from Liquigas in 3rd position. Jeffrey Lauder, BMC, out on the front. And Bradley White from the Ouch team, presented by Maxxis, rounds out the 4. We go back to the peloton now, which is over 5 minutes behind. It's yo-yoed back and forth right around that mark throughout this stage. They've done all the mountains that they're going to do. This is pretty much a flat after the descent off the Patterson Pass. It's a flat run-in into Modesto. And as we talked about a moment ago, Colombia has started to work their way up to the front. No doubt driving the peloton a little bit more so that they can set their sprinter, Mark Cavendish, up for what he hopes is his 3rd victory of the year.
Dave, move left.
The riders have to be happy at this point that the roads are not wet. They've gone in and out of rain throughout the day, and at the moment, the 4 in front are enjoying dry roads as well. Well, while we've got a chance, let's check in once again with Rosca Mather, who continues her quest to just figure out what this cycling thing is all about.
This is Garmin. You guys do the GPS stuff?
Absolutely.
Let's go check out the Garmin unit.
This is the Garmin 705. It's going to take us.
So this is your phone?
No, I wish I could text with this. I wish I had tons of girls. Hey, what you doing there?
You have that Joaquin Phoenix, like, nice facial tone thing. What you're showing me is something bikers can use.
Absolutely. Well, only ours. And what we do is a lot of times we'll pre-program the route on the Garmin.
Yeah.
And riders can see, oh, I'm 5K from the feed zone. I'm 10K for making a right turn into a crosswalk.
Is this the equivalent of, like, a biker being on a substance? I mean, he's got an advantage here. What is it?
No comment?
I'm going to tell on you.
Every other team is basically, they're out there, right? They're taking rides.
They have to memorize where they're going.
Stop in a Starbucks. They're crazy. They have no idea what's going on. Knowing is half the battle.
Damien, thank you.
You're welcome.
Damien and Garmin setting Rosca up there. It looks like, well, these guys don't need a Garmin at the moment. They know exactly where they're going. They are beelining it into Modesto. 4 out in front, as it has been for many, many miles. Bauke Mollema on the front. continuing that quest that he has, only 22 years of age. Phil, you mentioned before, but already he has a number of good results.
Yeah, and he's had a very good Tour de l'Avenir, which was invented as in the old days as the amateur Tour de France. With Tour de l'Avenir, the race of the future, is what it literally means, and that was the idea, to bring forward the young riders developing before they got to ride the big Tour de France. And he's come through that system, as well as coming through the Rabobank domestic system, whereas they bring you straight through a schooling system in Holland. Rabobank are terrific sponsors of the sport. They get you onto their continental team, and if you really crack it big time, you get to ride on their elite team, and that's happened now to Mollema. And so here he is. He's going to try and do his best.
I think the important thing about Rabobank as a sponsor is it not only supports men's professional cycling and the grassroots to feed the men's professional team. It has a very serious sponsor looking after, of course, women's racing in Holland, and of course they support track racing as well, and they've got some very good track riders coming out of Holland. So it's an across the board, and I left out one discipline of the sport there as well, because they actually are very big supporters of cyclocross, which is the winter part of the cycling circus.
Over in Europe right now, of course, that cyclocross season has been going on quite incredibly. Been following that, of course, as best we can. And as we continue to look at Bauke Mollema, let's take a look at where the breakaway stands compared to the peloton. The breakaway has covered almost 64 miles of this 104 miles they will do today. The peloton has closed it a bit in distance, now under 2 miles to go. Levi Leipheimer, of course, the GC man in yellow. He is in that group, being driven at the moment by both Columbia High Road and Astana. And Phil, speaking of teams that have done quite well across the board, Columbia High Road last year, I don't think any team did better.
No, Columbia had a terrific season, and both with their men's squad and the women's squad. Arguably the best team of the year. I think they actually were voted the best team of the year. But also Astana, who were not allowed to ride the Tour de France because of demeanours created by the old Astana setup. And they still came out as the top team alongside Columbia, winning the other major Grand Tours with Contador. But just looking down here now, it looks as though they've pulled back a couple of their Columbia riders and just left one. So there's they're just allowing one to stay doing a bit of pace making up. But it's Astana all the way down the line here.
That's Jaroslav Popovic doing most of the work on the front.
A familiar sight, Popo driving the peloton. He took a year where he left the fold, so to speak, of Lance Armstrong, but now he's back. Could be a great addition as we head into the Grand Tours later this year. He's helping Levi at the moment. Back with you live on Versus, stage number 3 of the Amgen Tour of California. Astana has been driving the peloton all day. Columbia starting to work their way into the mix, trying to bring the gap, which at one point was almost 6 minutes, down under a manageable mark. It now is at about 4 minutes and 40 seconds to these four. Bradley White from Ouch, presented by Maxxis. Jeffrey Lauder from BMC. Brian Vanberg from Liquigas now at the front of that line. And Bauke Mollema from Rabobank, the orange and blue jersey. Those are your four that have broken away. They broke away early on. We had that massive climb up Sierra Road, a Category 1 climb within the first 10 miles of today's stage. That is when these four, and actually Francesco Manthebo came over as well with him. Manthebo was in first coming over the Sierra Road King of the Mountain points because he wanted to get as many King of the Mountain points as he could, but after that he just dropped right back to the group. Well, as we mentioned, Columbia High Road beginning to move to the front of the peloton. One of the reasons we can of course surmise is that they are trying to drive the pace for their man Mark Cavendish, but as we said at the top of the show, a lot of other sprinters to contend with. One of them is Tom Bonin, his Quick Step team moving to the front. Bob Roll caught up with Tom earlier.
Couple of climbs early in the stage, maybe some attacking, but do you expect the peloton to regroup before the finish? A lot of flat rows before the finish line.
It's a really hard start, not only the hill, but afterwards it's also really, really hard, and I'm not sure what's going to happen. I think everybody's a little bit tired of the first 2 days, and now there's a classification. I mean, the good riders already in front, so I don't think they will try something today, but you never know. But I'm expecting that everything will get back together after the hard first section.
You had a stage win in similar conditions in last year's Tour of California. Maybe today another chance for that.
Yeah, we'll see how it goes. The legs are there already, so just take the opportunity when it comes.
All right, good luck, Tom.
Thanks.
Bob asked him about that win last year. Let's take a look. It was stage number 2, the Amgen Tour California. Tom Boonen, as he has done so often, coming across the line with that big charge in front of all the other contenders. One of 16 wins he had in 2008. And just as we take a look at Boonen's situation last year, we see the Quick Step jerseys starting to come to the front as well. So it's Columbia, Astana, and Quick Step right there. We check back in with the leaders. That's BMC's Jeff Lauder, 31 years of age. This guy, Phil's had multiple stage wins throughout his U.S. career. One of those riders, I think, as we've talked the first couple days about, who finally gets a chance on American soil to show his stuff.
Well, that's that comment can go for all of these Americans who don't race a lot outside of America, but America has some very, very good racing cyclists, and they really lick their lips when they get a chance to snap at some of the big names that come here from Europe. And the Europeans suddenly find, hey, it's not quite so easy as we thought coming over here. These guys really can race, and they can't control them like they might try to control in Europe. Result is, Americans are always on the attack in this event.
We noticed that a little earlier in the year as well in South Australia in the Tour Down Under, because although it was pretty much all the Pro Tour teams and all 18 Pro Tour teams participated in the Tour Down Under, there were 24 Australians on the start line, and the Aussies were on the attack every day, because for them, being able to race with such a great field, it was pretty much like the World Championships or the World Cup, and they were going for it every day.
A case in point in that also, as we awaited everyone in Santa Cruz yesterday, Ben Jacquemain, as you said often yesterday, Paul, he and his brother Andy, they had family and friends at the finish line, and when he crossed the finish line, that was what drove him throughout the day, was not only having all those people there to cheer him on, but because it was an area that he knew, he really wanted to show them what he had.
I just caught a quick glimpse there of the shoulders of Tom Boonen moving up towards the top end of the main field, and I think you can now start to see over on the right-hand side the orange-clad men of Team Rabobank. That's the team of course, a man in the breakaway, Bauk Mollema, but it's also the team of Oscar Freire. Freire, a 3-time champion of the world, one of the great sprinters of the world as well. We've got a lot of great sprinters in the Amgen Tour of California this year, and they're all, even though we're still about an hour away from the finish, they're all now starting to get nervous, starting to get interested and concentrated in the race, because they're just starting to get the little sniff of victory in the air.
I wanted to ask you earlier when we were talking about Levi Leipheimer, even though it didn't seem much, of course, for anybody, any mortal man, it would be much, but for you hardcore bike racers, it didn't seem like much, as you said, when he went down. How much, though, does that affect him mentally, even though physically he might not be hurt that bad?
That didn't look like a bad crash at all. The worst crashes are the ones that you might have on a large descent going downhill and take a big slide, because there you'll go down, and most of the time it's superficial, but it can leave a hematoma on the hip or on the back or even on the elbow. But that was one of those crashes the French referees like to call a crash without too much gravity, and I think he probably is fine today. He seemed very relaxed when he went down in the early part of the race and took his time making sure the bike was okay, had a couple of teammates alongside him to pace him back into the race. Those things happen on every day of a bike race, and most bike riders, they just shrug it off.
The gap coming down. It's under 5 minutes, more like 4.5 at this point. Will they be able to stay away? The sprinters teams, as Paul just mentioned, they are starting to come to the front because they want to give their men a chance. Finally, for the first time at the Amgen Tour of California, the sprinters could put on a show. In boxing, a famous line years ago was down goes Fraser. Today, down goes Leipheimer. Cavendish and Team Columbia High Road trying to do their best to drive this peloton to give Mark Cavendish a chance at a victory here at the Amgen Tour of California. He had one, or so he thought, last year. He was relegated after crossing the line. Levi Leipheimer right there from Astana. That yellow jersey is a bit lighter than a suit of armor, but he certainly could have used one when he went down earlier. He doesn't seem that affected. The 2-time defending champion here of the Amgen Tour of California going for the 3-peat. Phil, the shower is starting to show themselves a little bit more. How is that going to affect the psyche and also the ultimate goal of this chasing peloton?
It might well dampen the spirits, Craig, because it's raining heavily at Modesto. They're going to hit this rain in the next half an hour or so, I would think. It'll either come to meet them or they'll catch it up. But I don't see it finishing today in downtown Modesto, and it's ice cold. So I am thinking that it might dampen the spirits enough. These four boys are going to stick to the guns at the moment. It's 4:40, so it's gone up again a little bit. The last time check we had. So they're only going the same speed, and I would think we would need to see this gap coming down.
Well, we're still looking at around about 34 miles or 50 kilometers of racing to go to the finish, and it's still pretty much Team Astana doing the pacemaking on the front end of the main field. I reckon once we get to 35 kilometers to go, if it's still hovering around the 4-minute mark, you will see then, of course, Team Columbia High Road come to the front to increase the pressure of the chase. I was just noticing that Mark Cavendish was looking very attentive with 3 or 4 teammates in front of him, and also noticed Tom Bonin wasn't too far away. So I have a funny feeling that we're looking now at the teams of the sprinters waiting to try and wrap it up. There's a confirmation of the second sprint at Tracy. Brian Van Borg just ahead of Jeff Lauder and Bauke Mollema in third.
Trivia question for you, Paul. Which famous U.S. musician, calls Tracy, California home?
That's a very good question.
MC Hammer.
I was just going
to say MC Hammer. You asked the question, never gave me a chance to reply.
I'm sorry, Phil. I didn't realize you were, you know.
No, I'm into all that.
Oh, okay.
It was MC
Good.
Hammer, wasn't it?
Good.
Yeah.
Look at this, guys. The echelon starting to form. So we're seeing winds, Phil, as we would expect.
Yes, this is very interesting. The wind is coming top quarter of our pictures. We look at the riders. That's why the arrowhead is going into the picture there, and they're taking the best shelter from the wind as they can. But that's a sign of a very fast pace at the front now. Gap at 4:20. Still a lot of work to be done.
Well, what's happening here is the wind is coming from the top onto the riders' right-hand shoulders there, and what they try and do is ride at around about a 45 to 50 degree angle, because as the wind is coming from that side of the road, you can actually get a lot of shelter. Normally, if the wind is head-on, you ride directly behind the rider. Here, you'll ride at an angle and all the way down to the back of that line. Once the rider has done his turn at the front, and he's the one setting the pace now in the blue jersey of Team Astana, he'll swing off, slide down the back end of that line, and then get himself back into the shelter away from the wind. That way, you actually don't spend too much time setting the pacemaking, and you allow all of your teammates to be sheltered from the wind.
Paul, why don't they all become almost like lines of geese then behind each other? Why at some point does the peloton still balloon out?
Well, everybody else then is just scrambling to try and set up a new line, and it's very difficult. You'll see if the wind is in exactly the right position, you'll see individual lines start to form.
Well, the peloton here just passed over the sprint line in Tracy. Now, the next thing is, I'd like to hear the time gap. 4:20 at the moment. A little bit of movement in the peloton now as they try to put other riders up towards the front. So we might see some other teams from the sprinters now putting in a few men into that chase. There's a long convoy of cars back of these four riders. All official vehicles, of course. The road's completely closed down in the US for the Tour of California.
And once they start to bring the gap down to 1.5 or 2 minutes, they'll start to move all of those cars out, all of the motorbikes, and that's when these riders will get their first psychological blow, because as long as you've got the team cars behind you, you know that you've got in excess of a 1.5 minute gap. The race referees will not let anybody into that gap until the gap reaches the 1 minute mark. Once the main field starts to close in on them, the race referees who are in that grey car just behind them will start to order everybody to get out of the gap to keep the race nice and sterile.
Jeff Lauder out in front in the white and black jersey of BMC. Paul, what are you seeing physically from these guys? Are they showing any signs of fatigue? We're starting to see some grimaces on their faces.
No, they're starting to feel a little bit. You see, this is the third day of the bike race on the open road. I know it's the fourth day of the Amgen Tour of California if you include the prologue, but it's the third real day of racing. And all the riders will tell you, anyone with experience of riding stage races, is that day 3 and day 4 are usually the first days that fatigue starts to creep in. Then you have to get used to that fatigue because it's the same all the way down to the finish line.
Right, we've still got a number of days to go. This is a great shot by our helicopter from the leaders. This is coming back to the peloton right here. And for the first time, Phil, it looks in a long while that gap is now under 4 minutes.
Yes, they timed it through the sprinter Tracy at 3 minutes 45, so there's been quite a reaction there from the field. There is the peloton moving swiftly. Now, I thought I heard Radio Tour say that it was only going to be one circuit when they get into Modesto instead of the planned 2, so they've knocked a lap off there. And there is the time check at 3 minutes 45 confirmed. So I think we're only going to see them. I think when they come through the finish line, they'll get just a bell for the last lap. We'll have to wait and find that out as we continue.
The peloton doing their job, starting to close the gap. Astana has been out in front. Now it becomes the sprinters team's turn. But for the 4 out in front, they've done a great job to keep this break up around 4 minutes. Levi Leipheimer in yellow. He and Team Astana controlling the race. Close to 3 hours of racing so far in stage number 3, 100+ miles from San Jose to Modesto. These are the 4 that have been out in front almost from the get-go right at the moment, and that's Bouk Malema from Rabobank in the orange and blue, closely followed by the Ouch presented by Maxxis rider Bradley White from Liquigas in the green, Brian Van Borg, and rounding that whole group out was Jeff Lauder from BMC. Even though it seems as though we've seen a few teams start to get in the mix, it still is Astana out in front. So, guys, Phil, I'm going to start with you. Rate the stage so far with Levi Leipheimer and Astana. Have they done everything they've wanted to do so far?
Been a perfect day so far for them. They've marshaled the races exactly as they want to. They're not interested now. It's come back to 3:20, so they've almost got Mollema back into range of his of Leipheimer's yellow jersey. So things are going according to plan. 3 minutes 20, still plenty of time to reduce it to well inside that 3 minutes. The only question now is whether they catch them or not. Beginning to look as though they will because of the extra firepower coming in from Quickstep.
I hate to be the master of doom once again, but once you see the main field like that, and once we start to pull back, you all of a sudden get an idea of what the main field are looking for. And on a long straight road like this, they know exactly the distance because they can see over the 2.5 to 3 minutes gap what's the difference is, and they now know exactly how to time their effort to perfection, and that's what these professional guys are always good at.
So, Paul, Phil has given Astana an A. Would you give the sprinters team so far an A as well?
Absolutely. Everybody has so far played a perfect tactical game here this afternoon. Astana did exactly what they had to do. They allowed a breakaway to go very early on of guys who were not dangerous in the overall classification. They pegged their advantage to around about the 5 minute mark, slowly started to accelerate to bring that group of 4 riders back into a reasonable distance, and they now know that as they get a little bit closer to the finish, the teams of the sprinters will now all of a sudden start to come forward and whip up the pacemaking. So the situation right now is the breakaway is going through 73 miles covered. Levi Leipheimer and Mark Cavendish are in the main field at 3 minutes and 45 seconds, and the information has just come through that instead of 2 laps around the city of Modesto down towards the end, there will only be 1 lap for these riders, and that is going to make it a little bit more pressure to make sure they catch them before they get into the streets of Modesto.
A lot of people tuning in, Phil, for the first time due to, of course, the welcome back party we're all giving for Lance Armstrong, or at least a lot of people who follow cycling are. So explain why, especially today, these 4, why do you go off in a breakaway if the odds are that you're going to get caught?
Well, the odds are you'll get caught, but of course, as we've seen a couple of times this year, there are times when you don't get caught, like Francisco Mancebo on the day 1 of the race, on that long road race to Santa Rosa. And so, you've got to take a gamble. I mean, if you don't take a gamble and attack, then you might as well go to the finish in the pack and lose to Mark Cavendish or Tom Bonham, because you won't win either. So you've got to go out front and see what happens. There's other reasons too. You put teammates ahead, it draws the sting of the other team's top riders, and it means they're wasting energy. So if you are caught, the effort made by other teams to catch you may have weakened those riders for other tactics later in the race.
Cycling really is a thinking man's sport, isn't it, Paul? You just don't get on your bike every morning and just pedal as hard as you can.
No, you have to think about every move, because I was once told by a very good British professional rider by the name of Barry Hoban that every effort you make in a long stage race like this has to pay. You have to get something back from that effort. If you give effort out for free, you're going to lose out halfway down the road.
That's correct. Yeah. And at the moment, it's all Astana again. So there's not a lot of help now. They've sort of pulled their riders from Columbia and Quick Step. And I'm just wondering if perhaps they're not so sure they're going to bring these boys back now.
I just noticed big Tommeke Boonen moving up to the front, and he's just keeping a check on Team Astana. And it is at the moment, again, coming into that era where there's a little bit of tactical maneuvering going on. I feel that we still have got a great chance of catching the 4 breakaways, but it's a question of who is going to come forward first and put their cards on the table. And first of all, we'd noticed that Team Columbia High Road have been happy to do so, but you can notice that the other team of the sprinter there, Tom Bonen, he's only sent 1 rider to the front end of the main field. It needs to be a concerted effort of 2 or 3 riders per team if they're going to pull them back.
And that's not what's happening now, because there you've got the lovely diagonal line there. It means the wind is coming from the top right picture, blowing right across that diagonal line of riders. They're hiding in the slipstream of the other riders, but they're all Astana riders with just about 2 exceptions. I don't think they're well organised yet, and I think Astana are playing a game here as well. They need Molimar back, but they're trying to tempt the other teams to come out and chase with them, and it's not happening just now.
Well, they're actually only setting what in the term of professional cycling you call a false tempo, because this is not an organised chase. As Phil said, there's only 1 guy on the front end of the main field who's setting the tempo for long periods of time. And I think as we get a little bit further up the road, they need to be turning round like a bicycle chain. A number of riders sharing the pacemaking, and that will bring this pace up to 40 miles an hour.
It's a bit like a game of Texas Hold'em out on the road. Who's bluffing who, and whose bluff will pay off? 4 still out in front. We've talked about the weather, it seems, all week long at the Amgen Tour of California, and we're going to continue to talk about it today in Modesto. Raindrops coming down. It was sun earlier in the day, and since then it's been intermittent showers, if at not times hard rainfall. The umbrellas obviously are out with all the spectators, and the debris in the road the riders have been having to contend with a lot throughout this 2009 Amgen Tour of California, and today it looks as though will be no different. 3 hours and 23 minutes so far out on the road. We expect them here within 45. It's been a group of 4 out in front since basically the start of the day, guys. And since that time up Sierra Road, which we're now going to go back and look at earlier today, gentlemen, it's been these 4, and they instigated early, Phil.
This is how it all happened on the Sierra Road today.
Started off in San Jose, the oldest town in California, established back in 1777. But they were not thinking history as they left. Levi Leipheimer visiting with David Zabriskie from Garmin Slipstream, excuse me, and they would go through their neutral area, Phil. And then, of course, it would all happen again. The attacks, fast and furious.
These are horrible stages, Craig, because here you have a mountain sitting just literally down the road after the start. They haven't had the time to warm up because of the weather like this. Normally you'd see them out getting those legs warm, riding up and down, but they stayed in their team cars, and they're straight onto the slopes, and that's why those who feel good attack straight away.
And to come out of the starting blocks like that, straight out of town and up Sierra Road, is no mean achievement. And one thing that I think was extremely important was as we got to the early slopes, there was a breakaway formed almost immediately as they started Sierra Road, a second category climber, a big number of pounds for the riders to try and get themselves as many points as possible in the King of the Mountains classification.
One of those men was Francisco Mancebo, who's leading in that King of the Mountains jersey at the moment. There he is from Rock Racing in second position right there. He wanted those points for himself, and he would do that. And Phil, afterwards, he would drop back. So he was happy with just those points off of Sierra Road today.
Yeah, pure climber, Mancebo, but he wants to keep his lead in the Californian Tourism King of the Mountains. And so that was his venture. He knew the points had to be put into the bag early on today. 8 kilometers covered at the top. Big cheers from the crowd despite the rain. And once over the top, ahead of Molimar and Brad White, he would go back up to the field. Now there's the traditional grabbing of the newspaper. It's not to relieve boredom on the way down, Craig. It's to go up the jersey and to shut out the cold wind.
And after the peloton would come over, led by Astana, they would make it over Sierra Road, and then their quest really was still ahead of them, wasn't it, Paul? Because they had to keep that gap at a manageable distance.
Yes, they did, but this was a very sensible start by Team Astana. Instead of trying to chase away and pull everybody back, they just sent a very smooth tempo at the front end of the main field.
I just watched this. Armstrong, that's Leipheimer touching his back wheel and burying himself under the rest of the peloton. That's the race leader of the Tour. That came soon after the descent of Sierra Road. And Levi Leipheimer going down. The orange helmets. There are a lot of riders from the Garmin Slipstream team who are involved in that delay, including Christian van der Velde.
No panic at all on board for Levi Leipheimer there. They first of all tried to repair his bicycle, then decided, well, forget about that. We'll give him a brand new machine straight off the car. He never panicked at all and was pushed back into the race there by his team mechanic and was waited for by the rest of his teammates.
Leipheimer would make his way back in, no problems, as Paul just mentioned, and Astana doing a great job. But Paul, you brought up a great point earlier in terms of the physical effects that third, fourth day of a stage race draws you, but also Levi showing the mental effects as well, also some mental fatigue.
Well, a little bit of mental fatigue, but I tell you what, when you've got a team around you like Team Astana have built here for the Amgen Tour of California, that also gives you the psychological advantage, because at the moment, any one of 5 riders out of Team Astana can look at possibly winning this bike race.
That yo-yoing that we've seen, Phil, of the peloton versus the leaders, at times Quick Step, Team Columbia High Road moving to the front, is that as much to test themselves and to see what they have as it is to see what Astana's going to do?
The thing is that at the moment, Astana have had total control of this race, and that is probably the way it's going to be, but you never know, because they've recovered from setbacks every day, including today with the crash to Leipheimer. So they'll be very relieved right now that it is the yellow and white jerseys. There's George Hincapie of Team Columbia High Road, who seem to be wanting to take control of the race and do Mark Cavendish a favour. There's Mark Cavendish. He knows if they get him down there in sight of the finish, the Manx missile is going to have to try and take it out. That's his job. 89th overall, half an hour behind. Doesn't mean a thing to a sprinter. His job in a race is to win stages when the chances come his way. That's the way it is.
No one more stages last year than Team Columbia's Mark Cavendish, hoping to do the same thing again in 2009. He's won 2 already at the Tour of Qatar, and really being a sprinter, it's not just what you have physically, it's also about your mentality. Let's find out.
Here comes Mark Cavendish. He swings to the left. He kicks. Mark Cavendish so quick over this last distance as Cavendish races towards the line. He gets it. That is unbelievable.
I think there's a common misconception that sprinters, and me particularly, are like assholes, you know? Like, some people associate confidence with arrogance. Confidence is when you know what you've done to get to where you are. When I say I'm the fastest rider in the world, and I think facts pretty much state that, I'm nowhere near the strongest sprinter, nowhere near the technically best, I'm nowhere near the tactically best, you know, but I'm the fastest. They see the confidence when I win, but they don't see this criticising when I don't win. There's so much happening around you at the finish, and those bunch sprints, there's so much happening around you.
These are desperate moments by the sprinters, and they've all just got to go for it now.
So as soon as you cross the line, every bit of emotion that's been pent up the last 50 kilometres comes out. If you looked at an overhead shot of the Tour stage, you'd see that, you know, you're not just in one line, it's a massive fight. That's where teammates come in. They're not just leading out the end, they're making sure their sprinters at the front. And these guys are sacrificing all of that to keep me in the best position for me to win. You know, it takes some very dedicated, some very selfless people to do that. You make 1,000 decisions in the last 3K. Yeah, I know I can last between 200 and 300 metres, and I'll go then. And hopefully nobody comes around me and I can cross the line with my hands in the air. And then what makes it even more special is turning around and seeing your whole teammates crossing the line with their hands in the air as well.
So guys, let's talk for our new fans a little sprinting 101. Phil, it all starts with sprinters are going for the points at the end of those stages and the bonuses.
That's what it's all about, you know. It's like the 100 meters dash in a track and field equivalent, but this is a little bit sharper. They'll cover 100 meters in around about 9 seconds. The world record on the track is just over 9 seconds, yeah.
Yeah, well, you've got to bear in mind that the sprinters, the guys who normally the guys who have fast twitch muscles, and they've got to be extremely good when it comes to bike handling. And I have to say, the one thing you have to have as a sprinter is nerves of steel, or you just check out your brain with 300 meters to go.
Here he is, Mark Cavendish, the Isle of Man inhabitant, doing his best to represent Columbia High Road. He's done it better than any other sprinter in 2008, and he started off 2009 well.
Cavendish looking very relaxed, I think, today. He thinks, well, if the boys get me up there, I'll try and win. If the boys don't get me up there, I guess I won't. And so he's just waiting to see what transpires just now.
Cavendish and the other sprinters going for that Herbalife points jersey here at the Amgen Tour of California. But these four in the breakaway, they want to have something to say about it by the end of the day. Also some time bonuses on the line as they make their way into Modesto. 10 seconds, in fact, for the winner. That would be taken off his overall general classification time. The closest at the moment to Levi Leipheimer is Bauke Mollema, only 2 minutes and 14 seconds down on the GC standings, in 18th position behind Levi. He has been the virtual leader on the road. Our helicopter moving back, showing you the gap to the chasing group. Astana has been on front of the peloton all day long. They've begun to be met up there with Team Columbia High Road as well as the Quick Step team. It still is a sizable gap. It's been close to 2 miles for most of the day, and there it is. The peloton, that mass moving from left to right, and you continue to see the yellow jerseys of Columbia High Road up there, the blue jerseys of Quick Step, as well as Astana, as you would expect. The gap has come down 3 minutes and 20 seconds, but at the moment it's Brian Vanberg from Liquid Gas driving the 4 in front. They've done a great job of staying away. Before we bring you that, we've got plenty of cycling to bring you here on Versus. The gap has now come down to 3 minutes, so very quickly the peloton has righted the ship, and they've decided it's time to get serious and to chase these 4 who have been out in front almost the whole day. It's been Bauke Mollema from Rabobank right there. That's Bradley White from Ouch, presented by Maxxis, who's 27 years of age. Back in 2007, competed on Discovery Channel's team, their team in China, the Marco Polo team. Jeffrey Lauder from the BMC squad is out there as well, as is Brian Vanborg from Liquid Gas. The peloton, guys, has gotten serious, it looks like, haven't they, Phil? They're now down to 3 minutes, so the pace has been upped.
Well, I now debate them catching these 4 riders. I really do. I don't think that they've got about half an hour left to race to the finishing line, which means they'll hit Modesto 5 minutes before that. So 25 minutes to the line. They haven't caught them by the line. They won't catch him by the finish, that's for sure. It's going to be touch and go. But then again, how often have we seen a professional peloton snap them up at exactly the right moment?
That's the professional decision, and they're all, you can see a number of different teams now creeping into that line, just waiting for the moment to crank up the incredible speed that they're able to attain in the last half an hour of racing. Cavendish just over to the left-hand side there, sitting in there nice and comfortably. He's trying to get himself to the front end of the main field, make sure that he doesn't slip too far back. There's a little look at just exactly where everybody is. The breakaway are now at around about 80 miles of racing. 1 mile behind is Mark Cavendish, and he's locked in the main group there. In fact, he's riding in around about 15th to 20th place.
Yes, 1.1 mile. That means they've got to race a good 2 miles an hour faster than the breakaway to catch them in half an hour of racing. It's a big ask.
Well, speaking of miles per hour, Phil, what would be the speed difference between now and a few minutes ago? How much have they upped that speed?
Well, they look to me as though they've actually slowed down, which indicates to me they're picking up a nasty wind right now. You can see the heavy rain that we've had here, and it's eased off for the riders as they approach, but the fields are soaking. And I think their enthusiasm is damped down a bit. You've got a lot of bike riders in this race. You've got 17 teams. We've only seen 3 teams doing any work at the front, and there's 4 teams up the road, so there's 4 that won't help. The odds are not stacked in their favor.
Finally, we're seeing the Cervélo team, Paul, also come to the front.
They've got a great big sprinter in their midst, and that's Thor Hushovd. They don't seem to be chasing yet in earnest, but I still have a gut feeling in the back of my mind, Phil, that these guys know exactly what they're doing. The time gap, although it doesn't look too fast here, is still continuing to come down. It's now 2 minutes and 45 seconds.
Well, that's a quick 15 seconds they've just knocked off there. That looks a little bit more promising. Now, if they get much closer, somebody up in that front foursome is going to make a move. I would go for Mollema to try and take it on alone. They'll start to attack each other now. They want to not lose the impetus. They've got to keep it going. They know they would expect this situation, but they've actually got themselves into a possibility of winning here.
Just noticed there halfway down the main field how all of those lime green jerseys were starting to get together as a group. That would be the team of Liggett and the team, of course, of Ivan Basso, but more importantly the Italian sprinter Francesco Chicchi, and he will be in a while wondering whether or not should we chase, because they've got a man in the breakaway, but they've also got a great sprinter who can finish it off.
And speaking of timing too, Phil, it's not just the timing to catch this group and how they can calculate that, but it's also you don't want to catch them too early, isn't it? Because someone could leave the peloton on a flyer.
Well, that's why they tend to hold off as long as they can, knowing they can catch them. But I'm not too sure that they're feeling that confident back there just now. You can see by the angles at those helicopter shots, there is a nasty wind coming across the front of the bunch. They're not too keen on it. They haven't got a great enthusiasm. They're actually 10 minutes behind the slowest schedule, and they started 10 minutes earlier, so that puts them 20 minutes behind, which means that it's been a difficult day of racing.
This usually is the stage on paper, Paul, where you would have hoped for a tailwind coming off the California coast going from west to east, but they were not so lucky.
Yeah. Well, you live here, so who else can I blame?
I'll take the blame.
Okay, good lad. Well done. No, in fairness, these are not the normal weather conditions, and I've been very appreciative of the riders over these last 2 days in atrocious conditions. Also the public too. Because they've been on all of the climbs and out in the towns in their thousands despite the rather horrible weather conditions. These boys look as though they're picking it up again to me.
Well, definitely Mollema on the front here is starting to whip up the pace a fraction. He knows, as a seasoned professional bike rider, what the differential in the speed can be on the run in towards the finish. These guys now, I would say, having been at the front of the race for such a long time, will not be able to push their pace up to very much more than 47, 48 kilometers an hour. Whereas in the main field, once this main field really starts to wind up the sprint inside of maybe 20 kilometers to go, they'll be charging into the outskirts of Modesto at around about 60 kilometers an hour. That's 40 miles an hour, so they can still wipe out a 3 or 4 minute advantage.
Well, sorry, Craig.
No, go ahead, Phil.
No, I was just saying that they're looking to be around about 38 kilometers from the finish still out there. And they're saying it's now coming down to 2 minutes 30, so they are catching this group, and with 30 kilometers left, and it is very much possible they can bring them back.
Bauke Mollema, we've talked about how he's only 2 minutes and 14 seconds down on GC, sitting in 18th position behind Levi Leipheimer. But Paul, he's only a minute and 35 seconds down to Robert Gesink in the Young Riders jersey, which would be a big feat for him, wouldn't it, to be moving to that today?
Yes, but I don't think this group is going to finish it in excess of 2 minutes in front, if they even are going to finish in front. My gut feeling to me is it's pretty much over. The writing is on the wall for these guys. We're looking at the way that they're proceeding, and all of the time where we're getting the time checks, although the main field doesn't look like it's chasing in earnest, it's still eating into their advantage. We've seen them be shaving off 15 seconds every couple of kilometers over the last few moments, and I think shortly, before we come even into the outskirts of Modesto, these four riders will be back in the main field.
And the conditions are now deteriorating, as you can see.
The riding looks to be on the wall for these four. Bauke Mollema at the moment, nobody's told him that, down in that aero position, trying to cut the wind as best he can for Jeff Lauder behind him. But the peloton, they are starting to string out as well. And as Phil and Paul just mentioned, the pace has been upped. The goal is now in front. Welcome back to our live coverage here on Versus of stage number 3. The peloton has upped their pace. They now have closed to within 2.5 minutes of the 4 out in front. Beautiful pictures, and they have left the rain at intermittent times throughout the day. It is raining, however, in Modesto at the moment. But for these 4, the goal has always been the same. Once they broke away, it's to try to keep that gap on the peloton, especially for Bauk Malema from Rabobank there in second position. He started the day only 2 minutes and change behind GC leader Levi Leipheimer. He would love nothing more than to throw that yellow jersey on at the end of the day. But it looks as though the peloton not going to allow that. Astana has been in charge of the peloton throughout the day. But in the past half an hour or so, the sprinters teams have come to the front. Garmin Chipotle putting in a good effort as well. That's Steven Koza hamming it up for the camera, going by the Jelly Belly cycling squad. 17 teams here at the Amgen Tour of California. AG2R, BMC Racing, of course, the black and white. It's been a good day in the peloton. Aside from Sierra Road, it really hasn't been incredibly at hard pace. These 4 have done all the work and provided that carrot, as they say. They are being chased.
It's getting darker every time we look at these pictures now, Craig, and they're racing towards quite heavy rain in the finishing town of Modesto. The gap at 2.5 minutes and holding. We're now debating the fact that Astana don't want to catch this breakaway and maybe even want to pass the yellow jersey on to the Dutchman with just a few seconds advantage, because that would mean Astana tomorrow don't have to ride on the front of the peloton.
You're right. It's a tough stage, isn't it, Paul, tomorrow? I mean, it's going to be a day of not just mountaineering, but it's also going to be a day that could be very cold. They spend a lot of the day over 2,000 feet of elevation.
It's a difficult day tomorrow. In fact, there's hardly any flat on tomorrow's course. It's all uphill and down dale. There's a good study there as we look at the main field going by. And 2 minutes and 25 seconds, I have to say, is still starting to come down, but that's not a proper chase.
Inching down a bit, but as we have said, it's up to the sprinters teams right now to close that gap all the way. This morning, Bob Roll was able to catch up with Columbia High Road's Mark Cavendish.
So far, no chances for the sprinters, but a lot of flat roads before the end today. Are you looking forward to perhaps finally having a field sprint finish in this year's Tour of California?
Oh yeah, definitely. You know, yeah, because it's been hard so on, but it's going to be hard the first half of this stage as well, so we'll have to get through that and then hopefully we'll run sprint at the end.
If there's some attacks on the first climb and the field splits up a little bit, will Team Columbia High Road try to do some tempo to bring things back together in the finale?
I think so. You know, it's in our interest too. You know, I think if I can get delivered to the last corner okay, then I should be in with a shout of winning, so it's within our interest to bring it back, I think. So.
A lot of big names. It'd be great to have another feather in your cap today.
I'll try my best, Bob.
All right, Mark, good luck.
Mark Cavendish always very coy, but you can bet inside his head there is not a cyclist more confident than Mark Cavendish. And as he said, he would look forward to his team helping him get into position. He just moved away from our camera. There he is. Cavendish looks well placed.
Just looking at Mark Cavendish as he's just staying where he has to be, but he doesn't look like a rider who is really anticipating the catch here to me. I'm not so sure he will. We're getting down to the last 20 miles of the day, 32 kilometers, and they're not closing down. We'll soon be into Paul Sherwen's calculation of 1 minute per 10 kilometers. I can feel it coming on.
It's coming right on there, but I was just thinking we were tested a little while ago when we came up with a question about MC Hammer. Craig, you're the man from California. Do you know why Modesto got its name?
Oh, you know what? I was hoping you'd ask me that. I do indeed.
Oh, don't tell me.
Back in 1870, William Ralston, my friend, was offered to name the town after himself, and he decided no, he wasn't. That wasn't what he wanted to do.
He was muy Modesto.
Muy Modesto. And a Spanish onlooker said, why? Wow, that's very modest. And that's how the name stuck.
Fantastic.
That was a great softball you just gave me.
I'm glad we brought you along.
I'm leaving.
Get back to the race, Liggett. Look at this now.
Well, 2.5 and not gaining. I think we're poised here with a team like Astana, who don't want to catch these 4 guys, and a team like Columbia, who do want to catch him to deliver Mark, but don't want to put in the effort required. And the Rabobank boys on the far right here are getting to the front now to try and slow the chase down because of their man up front.
Now look at all the jerseys, the different colours of the jerseys now starting to group together. They're starting to get extremely tactical now. A few moments ago there was a couple of lines of different teams. You can almost see the line there of the riders from Quick Step. You can see the line of the riders from Liquigas. The gap now is down to the 2-minute margin, and I'm sorry to say to Mr. Liggett, that is spot on my ideal recipe.
Now you're really leaving, aren't you?
No, I'm in trouble. No, I'm definitely leaving now.
You're being
Well,
hit
if it
from
wasn't
both
raining so
sides.
heavily, I would be leaving. But as it is raining, I'm staying. 2 minutes 5 seconds, and just on about 20 miles to race to the finish. Touch and go, I have to say. But I was interested to see that flurry of Rabobank jerseys come to the front of the bunch to try and break up the rhythm of the boys. And so it's not a foregone conclusion, this catch.
Hey, Paul, what will the director sportif of Rabobank be telling Bauke Mollema? Are they just telling him to do whatever he needs to do to go at his pace?
He's got a free ride right now to try and get himself the stage victory, and he's actually picked up the pace.
That's a good point, and he's been...
Mollema out in front, even though Rabobank trying to set up their sprinter Oscar Freire at the end, perhaps. Mollema, as Paul said, he's got the hall pass. He gets to do whatever he wants. If he feels good, he'll get the green light. Otherwise, Rabobank will help bring that peloton up. It looks as though the sprinters' dreams could come true. They have closed down to 2 minutes, and for the first time in the 2009 Amgen Tour of California, the likes of... Well, we've been telling you about the racing that's taken part in some really bad weather. That has affected the pace of the peloton, including that hard climb up Sierra Road. And because of all those factors, we may have to show you the finish online. You can continue to follow us at versus.com, or you can log on to amgentourofcalifornia.com for enhanced live coverage, including that GPS tracking, the course map, play-by-play, and picture-in-picture. The four have been out in front for quite a long time. They're trying to hang on as best they can. Those four have been Bradley White, Jeff Lauder, Brian Vanberg, and Bauke Mollema from Rabobank. But Paul, you've been calculating over there. You've been working the abacus, and you feel they're going to be caught.
Well, there's too many sprinters in this race who have come here to get themselves a bit of glory, and I've got it down as this stage and the stage on Thursday really being the last chance that the sprinters have got of showing off their wares. And that's why I really believe that the teams of the sprinters will nail these four guys back before we get into the outskirts of Modesto.
Here's the relationship coming now as we pass the team cars with the four leaders up front. Then the empty road, and there is the peloton. It isn't that far away, but that represents 1 minute and 40 seconds. The time check has just come through. The way the pack is massing there like a swarm of bees is not an indication that they're racing that hard.
Well, no, I think it's a little bit like something that we were talking about just earlier. They've got the sight now of the four breakaways in their eyes, and they know just exactly how much effort that they need to put in to pull them back very quickly. And they're judging themselves on possibly trying to make the catch between 10 and 15 kilometers to go. And the reason for that is to create any counter moves and any confusion in the race.
Could, in fact, be a detriment, couldn't it, Paul, for the four out in front, that we've had such long, straight roads where the peloton can actually look forward and see that mass?
They can see them now. That 1 minute and 45 seconds corresponds to around about, well, it's less than a mile in actual distance, and they will be able to see that mile on these very long, straight roads. Maybe not physically see the riders, but they'll see the lights on the back of the cars, the lights on the back of the motorbikes, so they'll be judging themselves and judging their effort on that distance.
Well, they've just gone through some standing water there, the four leaders, and the good news for them is as they approach Modesto, the rain has stopped, but the roads are pretty wet, so we'll see what happens. Gap is at still 1 minute and 40 seconds. Vanborg here driving on. A good opportunity for him if it comes his way. It's quite a while since he won a race. He had one win only last year in the Tour de Loire, which is a French stage race. That's where we are. The breakaway's closing in, isn't it? Cavendish now just behind there by less than a mile the gap, but we're running out of blue lines here and only one circuit when we get into town.
That's the little blue circle over towards the right-hand side. That's where the riders are heading to, and it's around about a 3-mile, 5-kilometer loop around the city here. And these guys will hope that they can get into Modesto ahead of the main field, because very often on a finishing circuit, with the confusion of the circuit, you do still have a chance to survive. So the peloton, I would think, Phil, will be trying to catch them before they get into the streets of Modesto for the first time.
And as we head to town, our pictures are not behaving themselves. There is the finishing line. As you see, everybody's come out now because the rain has stopped. But the roads are wet. But again, another superb crowd here to welcome the riders in. They will get a lap of the city before they go back for the final finish. And will it be Jeff Lauder here? It wouldn't be surprised. If it got down to the finishing sprint, Jeff would certainly have his say. I'm sure of that.
It's always difficult to predict the winner out of a group of 4 like this, especially after a long day in the saddle. These guys are pretty much escaped after the summit of Sierra Road, and that was 13 kilometers of racing. So they've led this race now for about 150 kilometers, and you never know how the body reacts, especially on the running towards the finish.
Well, I think the chase is organized now.
Down to 145, and we are definitely going to show you the end of this race on Versus.com and Amgen Tour of California.com. Still too long to go. You can join us tomorrow at 4 Eastern, 3 Central for stage number 4 of the Tour of California. That's going to take us from Merced to Clovis, and we hope you join us for our live coverage again on Versus. It's been a day for the breakaway artists, but the sprinters are closing in. You can join us also for our encore presentation tonight at 11 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Pacific. Don't forget to join us right now on the web as we continue our coverage at Versus.com. Let's send it to Toronto for the Sabres against the Maple Leafs.